If this is a nervous breakdown, it's quite disappointing. The first book had been quite easy and natural for him to write. He'd based it on the landscape of his childhood. A literary masterpiece. A stunning achievement, laced with intrigue. It's a knockout. He was an overnight success. So when the swanky publishing house asked him to write a book based on his ancestral hometown, he left her, without looking back. The need to be loved by everybody else had overwhelmed the need to be loved by one. And he hastily packed up his Camden flat for two and moved to a New Delhi flat for one. He was certain that here he would find home. But he didn't find anything, or anybody. Here they called him an NRI, a non-resident Indian. He wrote like an outsider, and the publishing house grew tired of the useless drafts. They called for an intervention.
I'm very excited about this. It's such an honor for me. I was so impressed with your first book. The ironic style, the twisted sensibilities, the schizophrenic parents. Your family is fascinating.
My novel was not autobiographical.
Well, moving on then.
There are 4 stereotypes to publishers. Smart and enthusiastic. Ideal. Smart and uninterested. His personal favorite. Dumb and uninterested. Tolerable. Dumb and enthusiastic. His current situation.
We need to address the problem at hand. Think of your story as a cup of coffee. The context is the cup, and the content is the coffee. You have to find the context first, and then fill it up with the content.
Content is coffee? Clearly he had nothing left inside of him. Naturally, he began to look outside. He soon became a voyeur, desperate for something that he could not lay his hands on. He began spending time in some very strange places. Markets, flyovers, parking lots, bus stops. That was when he saw her for the first time. Her face. That moment. He started to follow her. This was not a whim. He was truly drawn to her. What else had happened to her today? What was she truly crying about? She sat down at a bench and took out a book that she held in her hand, but did not read. He started to approach her, but then something particularly inconvenient happened. A moment of silence. The next day she was feeling quite confused. She was intimidated by his interest in her and didn't understand the way they had left off. He had walked her to the exit gates of the park and nonchalantly bid farewell. "See you back here tomorrow." He had walked away before she could think to say no.
It's the Laughter Club, a form of group therapy. They come here every day.
Fascinating characters. What is character but determination of incident? And what is incident but illumination of character?
Who said that?
I did.
No, really, who?
Henry James.
Who's that?
Well, he's only the greatest contributor to literary theory.
It's very good wordplay.
The next day he continued speaking of literary theories. Desire. It's what the character desires, that's what moves the story forward. It doesn't matter what the character wants, as long as they want it passionately.
You know so much about writing. You should have been a writer yourself.
I am a writer. A published one, in fact.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know.
He felt an odd, whimsical relief at this thought, and continued. Days went by, and he continued educating her on theories and criticisms. She liked listening to him, and began to feel quite relaxed around him. Good literature is always timeless. Feeling just a little bit bold today, she ventured,
I wonder if timelessness can be defined as a space where time does not exist.
That's quite a deduction. Henry James isn't the only one good at wordplay. She didn't know it at the time, but he had won her over. He had stayed up all night writing, first hesitantly, then furiously. Her profound vulnerability, it opened up a world of fantasy for him. He began to understand why he had followed her that day. You look beautiful today.
Why today?
I don't know. Something about today. His mind entered a new space, and the ghostly emptiness began to relent. She was beautiful, this girl, magnificent even, in her overwhelming weakness. He spent his nights writing, and she spent hers captivated with what she had inspired. A simple moment at the bus stop. His phone beeped with a message that she had fallen ill. She couldn't be there for the next few days. He stayed anyway, and only left when the park guards told him it was time to shut the gates. The next day she was waiting for him before time. She apologized several times for the days past. Had he been coming here anyway? Yes. Alone? Yes. She took out a pinwheel from her bag and let the wind spin it around. She was different. Nothing like the broken girl he had spent so much time with. It was almost like she had never existed. He failed to understand her today, and refused to understand her in the days that followed. When had he let her go, and more importantly, how had he missed that moment? He allowed himself to think about what happened, and stopped short. Could it be that simple? Love?
Love comes like a lightning bolt and it leaves like a stubborn sunset. She thought back to the day when she saw him watch her as she got off the bus. She remembered her nervousness when he saw her crying. She remembered her fear when he came up to talk to her. She remembered not knowing who Henry James was and her subsequent research on the greatest contributor to literary theory that night. She remembered the word play. She remembered his infatuation and her falling in love. She remembered his confusion. She remembered his distance. She remembered his disappointment. When had he let her go? And more importantly, how had she missed that moment? It's not what we build that's beautiful. It's what we tear down. She had reached here today knowing that he wasn't going to be there, and sitting here right now, she knew he would never come. And soon she would find out that he had moved away once again. That his new book was published, that he had written pages about a girl from the bus stop, that he had called the book a work of fiction. And she wouldn't feel anything. It would almost be as if he had never existed. Timelessness. The a space where time does not exist.